Greetings, everyone. Nate the Nerdarchy here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with some nerds.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
Nerdarchy is Dave.
For this GM number 1, we get into 3 ways to tackle this undefeatable character.
Jump down to the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
And also remember, if you have a GM 911, you can send them to us at nerdarchy@gmail.com. Subject line, GM 911.
So, Thomas sent us an email. You jokingly said, well, is this you, Ted? Because it's very similar to, one of his players is built similar to your character. He's got a Eldritch Knight with, I imagine, high armor class, he's got an Eldritch Knight wearing heavy armor, casting the blur spell, making it difficult for encounters.
Yeah, it's very hard for them to hit. Disadvantage on your attacks. So, and he wants to know how can he challenge this player without one, overwhelming the party, and two, not like make it look like he's just specifically targeting this player.
Yeah, not going full evil GM on him.
All right, so first and foremost, if all you're doing is putting monsters in that make attack rolls, this is what that particular character is specialized at surviving. So you need to think of different things that can be done. So first and foremost, areas that are going to nullify the magic. So, all right, this is going to be a problem for your wizard. Ouch, that's gonna hurt, but it's going to definitely alleviate this character's greatest strengths. Apart from that, spells like magic missile, they automatically hit. Well, if he casts shield as a reaction, well, you're still burning through their resources. You also have area effect spells that it's just saving throws, damage is going to happen regardless of whether he's got blur on or not.
And there's also some instances where it's not really targeting the player, it's targeting the character. And what I mean by this is, if you're in a combat with multiple opponents, and one of them is a spellcaster, and he clearly can see that you're using blur, he might, 1, dispel it and get rid of it. 2, cast magic missile because he sees you as a greater threat because his allies are having a lot of trouble targeting you, or 3, just go to area effect spells to nullify your advantage. But in addition to that, there are certain things that it's not going to matter, like traps and hazards. They don't rely on sight, so blur isn't going to matter. So if these kind of things are going on during the combat, 1, it'll make the combat a little bit more interactive and interesting, but 2, it also will kind of get around that. There's tons of stuff you can do, but the biggest thing I would recommend is just doing a variety of different types of encounter. If all your counters are kind of the same and it's like you hit monster hits you, yes, you've basically created a bunch of encounters that this one player happens to be really good at overcoming. But if you change it up with different kinds of monsters that use area effects, I don't know, maybe there's a Mind Flayer. He uses a cone effect. Maybe that Mind Flayer is in the Underdark. Well, you know what lives in the Underdark? Grimlocks. You know what Grimlocks don't do?
See.
They don't see. You know what I mean? And this is just creating an encounter that makes sense, but that particular player isn't geared towards overcoming.
Yeah.
And that's okay to put those in.
And there are also some creatures that have true sight, or illusions don't work well on them. And there's also spells that certain creatures have, like Drow have the ability to cast Fairy Fire. So that's going to nullify any advantageous spells that's going to be on him.
And again, you're talking about, a particular enemy or threat that are going to use tactics and strategy and be like, 1, we all have Fairy Fire, so it's good if we just Fairy Fire everyone anyway. And 2, it's extra good if we Fairy Fire that guy because, right now he's giving us a hard time.
So, and this comes, around to that concept of encounter design. If you're, every party, unless you're making a themed game where everyone is fighters or everyone is wizards, there's going to be a variety of different skills and abilities that the party has. Some characters are going to be good at one thing, one character is going to be good at another. So the idea is that you typically want to have this revolving wheel that keeps highlighting certain characters' advantages and certain characters' weaknesses. So if you can pinpoint those things over the course of your sessions, then you're doing a really good job at running this game. You're giving people the, oh man, things just really sucked for me tonight, and other people like, man, this was awesome because I got to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, giving different people different chances to shine. Another thing too is like the terrain, or the type of encounter. Like we keep saying, like maybe they're flying enemies, or maybe the terrain is columns that are over a pit or something, right? And you have to jump from column to column, and you need to use missile attacks in order to get to your enemies. All right, so he's an Eldritch Knight. Well, he has a very high armor class. That means he's probably a melee fighter, because he's using a shield.
Later encounters, because he would have burned through his spell slots, and they will be able to perform better than him on average with the extra encounters that come up.
Alright, so Blur is a concentration spell, lasts up to a minute, which means he's only going to be able... He's going to use one casting of the spell for one combat. Unless you somehow miraculously go right from combat to combat, which... in my opinion, that's poor encounter design. And if someone's running ahead to get to the next monster, that's when you absolutely need to put in traps and things that slow everything down so that that spell usage gets used up.
Well, I mean, that's one thing. Or just, let it happen. But, like, literally, that means no resting in between battles. And whatever resources you have to deal with, so that you're not going to get the advantage of short rests and stuff like that. So I'm even okay with them rushing to the next battle. But oddly enough, you should mention that someone, when we talked about the conjure elemental spell, is like, because we kind of complained about how long it takes to cast, and they're like, but it lasts a whole hour. How long does it take you to get through a dungeon? I'm like, what? Like, literally, they're saying, like, a dungeon should be an hour or less to go through the whole thing. They dungeon differently than me.
Yeah, in-game hour. A dungeon, that's a sprint, I think.
Yeah. But, also the other thing is, changing things up has a huge effect. Even in my own games, where my players are used to going through, like, maybe one, maybe two encounters a whole session, and if there's two, they're, like, spread out. Well, the first time I hit them with multiple encounters back to back, it was a complete game changer for them. The one night they had 3 encounters compared to their normal one. 2 of them were really close together. And, it totally changed things because they were playing to, I only do 1 encounter, and then the next time I did it to them, again, it was kind of very similar as far as resources and how they played the game.
Playing around with your encounter design to deal with their resource management definitely can change some things up and possibly alleviate some of the issues and stress that this one dude is causing. Now, I jokingly said in the beginning that, Dave thought it was me who did this, because this exact issue is something that I deal with continually with Dave's character. All right, I don't typically get to drop Dave's character. No big deal. That's not what I do this game for.
Drops everybody else.
That's what he does the game for.
But as I said, area effect spells, direct damage via like magic missile or that kind of stuff, and things that don't require attack rolls are really what you want to look at, because then you don't have to worry about the disadvantage. You don't have to worry about the high numbers. The other option is to just throw so many things that are low level at him. You'll burn through stuff eventually, and you might just get those 20s and land some hits, stop the blur from happening, and there you go.
Another thing is you have a character that can survive combat, but what if hitting the thing and not dying is not the way to win the encounter? There's other things that this character's not going to be good at when it comes to encounter designs that are not just based upon defeating the other side. Or last person standing, so what? You are invincible pretty much against all these people because of your high armor class and all of your other Eldritch Knight stuff. The rest of your party's on the ground. So that would also be considered not a win as far as I'm concerned if I was that character that was left. And that, in the game where we have a similar situation with Dave's character, there are people that get knocked down almost every combat. It just happens. And that's It just doesn't happen to be his particular character that gets knocked down most of the time. So there can be situations where if it's a total party wipe, except for his one character, well,
and that's a tactic that I've done, is I've looked at, okay, well, an intelligent adversary knows where to attack, and if after a round or two they've swung at Dave and they just can't land an attack, well, they can move to somebody else, and slowly but surely, if the rest of the party falls and they're all surrounding him and he hasn't taken them all down, well, then there's going to be a problem. Because fighter Eldritch Knight is not a cleric. They're not healing. They're not resurrecting fallen adversaries. So you could drop somebody and have the bad guy, pick it up and threaten. Okay, I'm going to slit this guy's throat, i.e., there's 2 failed death saves if he doesn't back off or if he doesn't do something. And, literally stop the combat and have these role-playing things, happen. That can change some things.
Yeah, you're not going to have access to a lot of big boomy spells. So, like we said, just a quick recap, change the pacing than what you normally do. You can change the counter styles that you normally have. That'll switch it up. And, make them think out of the box and have alternative ways to win the encounter.
So, what do you guys think? You have any further suggestions for Thomas? This is a great place to do that. And that's put it down in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can check us out over on Facebook.
You can also patronize us in a good way over on Patreon.
So until next time, stay nerdy.